Lee Cronin's The Mummy is the newest adaptation of the Mummy storyline by Blumhouse, and with a new twist from the Evil Dead Rise director, also from Dublin, like myself. It is intriguing to see another take on the Mummy franchise. As someone who grew up watching the original Brendan Fraser Mummy films, it is interesting to see a more horror tone on this incredible character. But is this film any good? Well, you're about to find out. So let's start off with the positives. In my opinion, I think the overall tone of this film being really mean was a nice twist. I'll be honest, I did not expect this film to have as much like kind of viciousness about it. This film is vicious, it's gnarly, it's extremely mean, no holds barred. The gore in this film is next level. If you thought what Cronin done with Evil Dead Rise was icky and getting under your skin, you have no idea what's about to hit you in this one. However, I do think that this does get held back in terms of an actual storyline. I feel like sometimes with the overall gore that's going on in this film, it kind of leads more away of this being a film that's going to scare you through making you feel disgusted rather than actually, building up set pieces and making you tense and having that suspense and thrilled. The only one scene I will say that actually has this level of suspense is when the two family members, played by Jack Rayner and Layla Costa specifically, is when the two of them are watching a VHS tape. That's all I will say. If you've seen the film, you'll know what I'm talking about with that tape. But this film is basically told all about this missing girl called Katie, who disappears and gets kidnapped on a family trip while the husband, who's played by Jack Rayner, the dad, is on a work trip in Egypt. And it's very interesting to note this film doesn't exactly feel like a traditional mummy film. Of course, you have the mummy coffin, you have obviously the tissue, the typical tissue from a mummy, and the wrapping and everything like that. But other than that, this film does get held back by a few things. Now, I know I was into my positives, but there's honestly not a crazy amount to get into in terms of positives or negative. I feel like this film kind of sits on that midway point. Like, the gore in this film is incredible. The practical effects are great. I do think that it gets to a point, though, of course, as I mentioned earlier, with them just having a sense of fear through disgust, which is kind of like a sense of what Terrifier does, but with nowhere near amount of comedy, so it kind of just feels mean to some audiences. However, I do want to talk about the overall story of how this just feels like Lee Cronin had a script for Evil Dead Rise 2 or a sequel to that Evil Dead Rise film and just threw the mummy on top of it because it would have made more money. Which, this is my issue with this film, is that it doesn't feel like a traditional mummy film. It does not. It just feels like an element of Evil Dead. I mean, you literally have characters that speak exactly like Deadites. You have the gore and overall makeup of these creatures looking exactly like Deadites. You have elements of the Omen in here with coyotes being fairly territorial of this specific area that feels very, very similar to the Omen with the character of Damien. I do feel like there's so many elements of this film that does some stuff right. I mean, there is creep factor, but it all relies on like bodily fluids. Like, it feels very Exorcist in a way. That's what I see a lot of people comparing this film to, is like The Exorcist mixed with Evil Dead and The Omen. That's one of the main reviews I've seen. But overall, I feel like this film, in terms of scares, is a little bit lackluster. I don't think this film is scary with all means, and there's so many TikToks going around right now that is displaying this film as the scariest film of the year. I have not been able to call such BS on a film. And this is coming from someone who loves Lee Cronin's directorial style. I love his style for Evil Dead Rise. I like his approach with directing in this film. I do think there could have been a little bit better elements in terms of Jack Raynor's acting. I feel like he's a little bit flat on some points. But overall, Lee Cronin does a good job with this film. Like, it does what it needs to do. But in terms of the actual like film itself, it is a little bit lackluster. Like, for me, as someone who's also Irish, supporting Irish-made films, like Jack Rayner's Irish, Lee Cronin's Irish, there was also a load of people behind the scenes and crew who were Irish, and I could not thank that enough. I mean, I could not support that enough, should I say, and I feel like there is an element of this film that definitely has something there if it wasn't The Mummy. I feel like this film could have stood on its own 2 feet and wouldn't have had all these expectations about it if it was just called something else. And I feel like there's something that's really glaring about that, and it's the fact that they slapped Lee Cronin's name onto this film. Because originally this film was just called The Mummy, and I feel like when you saw those early screenings, I mean, there was a big thing on social media about apparently how James Wan walked out of the film. I remember seeing that for a stage. That could have been a hoax, considering James Wan has been in all of the promotional videos with Lee Cronin and Jason Blum. You also heard people saying that it was basically going in thinking it was a continuation of the Brendan Fraser films, and so you had literally Blumhouse tweeting out saying Brendan Fraser is not a part of this film. And I feel like that is why they had to slap Lee Cronin's name onto this film. And when you think about it, in horror, I mean, you'd probably know Lee Cronin for Evil Dead Rise, but I don't think Lee Cronin has the name to kind of go and say, oh, yeah, this is Lee Cronin's The Mummy. I feel like if they just called it something else, maybe something to do with mummification, or maybe just anything else that didn't actually distinctly call it The Mummy, this film would have had, I think, 20 times the better reviews. Considering especially that this film isn't exactly a mummy tale. Of course, it has the mummy elements, and it doesn't really have those elements until maybe the last 20 minutes, in my opinion. Of course, you have the set design and the overall setting and location for where this is filmed in Egypt and stuff like that. And of course, you get the vibes of mumminess and mummification stories from that setting. But overall, this film, like, it could have been anything else. This could have been an Evil Dead film, and I honestly do believe it could have been the sequel to Evil Dead Rise with the way it's played out. I mean, you have a family whose, member of the family becomes somewhat possessed in a way, and it's ultimately down to that family to try and survive while in the same apartment or location of that demon. And that is something that's really interesting to me, but it is also extremely similar to Evil Dead Rise, so much so this film can honestly just feel like you're watching a continuation of the Evil Dead franchise. There was multiple incidents in this film where I was kind of feeling like, especially when one character talks, you get a vibe of, oh my god, this feels like I'm watching Deadites. It feels like I'm watching Deadites. And I feel like if I had known that this was a film nothing to do with the Mummy, I would have been like, oh, that's awesome, it feels like the Evil Dead, it feels cool. But the fact that I know it's supposed to be the Mummy and I'm just seeing Evil Dead isms, I'm just kind of going, oh, this kind of feels like Evil Dead but not Evil Dead. So it kind of doesn't feel like it's its own identity. While, for example, you have so much other things like the coyotes, like representative almost like the Omen. Of course, the bodily fluids like the Exorcist. You have literally a scene where this character kind of rises up out of her bed very similarly to Reagan in the original Exorcist. Like, there's so many elements of that kind of feels like you're seeing really cool elements of other films being pulled out, and ultimately it's kind of all meshed into this movie where it doesn't exactly gel to the point where, oh my god, this film is so original. It more or less kind of feels like, oh yeah, I remember that from one film. That was cool. I remember that scene. What's new though? And I feel like this is a problem with Blumhouse as well. I feel like we're getting too much of this promotional elements of like, oh my god, what happened to Katie? What happened to Katie? But you know what happened to her. You know the title is called The Mummy. You know by the end of this film you're going to see her somewhat mummified. You know you're going to see this massive tape of, oh my god, what happened to Katie? Are we finally going to find out what happened? Of course you know that's going to happen. And I feel like this film got a hard R rating. It got an 18 in Ireland, which is honestly unheard of right now. For example, the most recent movie to get an 18 in Ireland, to my knowledge, in terms of horror, was Terrifier. Everything else you've seen since Terrifier 3 came out has been a 16 here. So Lee Cronin's The Mummy getting an 18 here was very much, in my opinion, of course, it's getting that 18 rating purely because of the whole kid aspect of this film. That is very interesting as well. I mean, there is one thing I will always give respect to in films, is that when you can go into this film not knowing who's safe, I do like that a lot. I mean, there's elements of this film you kind of feel like, oh my god, is this person going to be like, oh my god, is this person dead now all of a sudden? Is this person at danger? Even though someone's the most innocent in the family, are they going to be the one to bite the dust next? And I feel like that's a really cool way, and Lee Cronin gets that right, in my opinion. I mean, it was like that in Evil Dead Rise. I mean, if you've seen Evil Dead Rise, you will know you genuinely have no idea who's going to survive that film, which is always really cool to me. However, I do think, and I do need to reiterate, this film, the more you watch Evil Dead Rise after you watch this, the more it feels the same. And I rewatched Evil Dead Rise upon watching The Mummy. I watched it in the same night, and I'll be honest, I could honestly say word for word it is near enough the same screenplay, purely because there's elements of this film that where people get possessed and controlled the exact same way the Necronomicon would in Evil Dead. It feels the exact same way, and more specifically in Evil Dead Rise. Now, is that an issue for me? Not exactly, but it definitely does feel like, hey, I'm supposed to be watching a mummy film here. Where is the elements of, oh my god, this is a mummy, this is really cool? Instead, it feels like, oh, I'm watching the mummy, but it's a Deadite. And of course, as someone who loves Evil Dead, I wasn't exactly opposed to seeing kind of a new rendition of Evil Dead. But I mean, when you have Evil Dead Burn coming out in July 10th and you have this mummy film, I was kind of hoping to get more of an original story with the mummy rather than just getting a Deadite film again. And personally, I feel like that's what's holding this film back, is that there's not much originality with it. Now, did I enjoy the film? Yes, this is a film that you can enjoy. It's not this, oh my god, this film is so elevated, it's going to have so many elements that's going to change cinema. No, it's not going to be one of those films. It is one of those films that you can sit back, relax, get a little bit creeped out and sort of the heebie-jeebies because of all the blood that goes on and those wincing actions. Trust me, as someone who's not exactly, as affected by gore as some people would be, there was elements in this film that kind of had me going, oof. There was a few things. One of them's in the trailer. I'll leave that out to your perspectives. But one massive issue for me, and I'm kind of coming to the end of my negatives right now, is that this film is so long. This film is exactly 2 hours and 14 minutes. And I do feel that it's a little bit too long for me. I do feel like it takes a long, long time to get sucked into this world. And I do feel like it's primarily down to the second act. To me, I feel like you have these elements of, oh, what's going to happen? Is something going to happen? I mean, they're out of the coffin. What's going to happen? Is this person safe? Is this person going to die? And there's elements where it just feels so dragged out. But then the third act is so grand scale, and the third act is amazing. I really enjoyed the third act. From when you have this character played by, I think it's May Kalamaui, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. She plays this investigator trying to find Katie in the first place, right? But her character comes into the household in the third act. When her character comes into this household, that's when the film kicks into gear. I love the third act of this film, and I will say that this third act of the film, it's grand, it's scary, it's elements of lighting perfection. I love the set design and set dressing of this film in terms of the third act. However, it takes so long to get to that third act to where it feels like the film is dragging its feet a little bit, and you're kind of getting like, okay, there's a scene, 20 minutes go by, oh, that thing is so disgusting, it's horrifying, oh, I hate it, and then another 20 minutes will go by, and 20 minutes and 20 minutes and 20 minutes, oh, she coughed up this amount of liquid, oh, that's disgusting, and then it would kind of go on to that pattern. I mean, there's a certain set piece where someone's teeth gets pulled out, but there's no reactions from the family when this person is literally picking out their own teeth, which is a pretty interesting thing to me, where surely someone in this family setting with this amount of people would see that, oh, this person is just picking out their own teeth, Overall, I thought the performances were okay. I did think that Jack Rayner was just a little bit like, oh, that's scary. It was a little bit like that. However, I do enjoy him as an actor. I mean, I really liked him in Midsommar. I really liked Midsommar. I mean, it'd be a big struggle to ask me what I didn't like about Midsommar, but in terms of this film here, Jack Rayner is in more of a lead role, I suppose, and he is interesting. He definitely plays the character well. I think it might be a sort of thing of, I just don't like his character per se, but in the third act, I like his acting. There's specific things that happen with him and his character in that third act that feel right for his character. It feels like that is a good bookend to how they would act in that third act, and if you've seen the third act, you'd know what I mean. However, I do think it is interesting. I do also think this film doesn't exactly shy away from a possible sequel. I don't know what it is. There's something in this film that kind of feels like, hey, this feels like it might be the start of something. And I don't know why I got that feeling. I mean, I might be the only person on earth that kind of feels that. But the vibe I got from specifically the ending was like, oh, wait, are we going to keep going with this? Are we going to possibly see something else in this same universe? Is this going to be a cinematic universe they're trying to make? I mean, it could possibly be the case. I mean, with James Wan and Jason Blum, I mean, this film will make a lot of money. For example, the film was made on a $22 million budget, and it feels like it's already hit that way. For example, from Bloody Disgusting here, it said opening weekend, it got 13.5 million domestic, which is really, really good for horror. I mean, especially for rated R. And for a film that's honestly, for example, with Blumhouse, you see them actually rarely going rated R. I mean, they go rated R for like Halloween and stuff. But for example, like with Five Nights at Freddy's, that should be rated R. I mean, we do need that cut. I will protest this to the end of time, that, you know, that was PG-13. You have so many films like, I think Undertone with A24 was 16 and rated R. So I feel like it's a case now where horror films don't have to be PG-13 just to make amount of money anymore. Once they're good, they're going to be received that well. I mean, you know, Sinners is a great example. Even though it's not exactly an outright horror film, it did make a lot of money and also done very well at the Oscars. So for example, with horror right now, I do feel like The Mummy, it will definitely make its budget back for sure, but overall I feel like this film definitely held back a little bit in terms of the story. I do feel like it's a good step for Lee Cronin's directorial style. I mean, there is one big issue that everyone's talking about with this film. There is about 20 million split diopter shots. I mean, I'll be honest, I was kind of counting them as I was watching the film, because they are used in Evil Dead Rise, but in this film, oh my god, is there a lot of them. As someone who's also a filmmaker, I mean, I didn't really mind it, but it did get a bit repetitive when it's just the same shot over and over and over again. It did get a little bit like, okay, that's, you know, the split diopter is a cool shot when it's used correctly and when it's not used completely frequently. For example, I think about 10% of this film is told in split diopter shots, but I do feel like that kind of just is Lee Cronin's style. I mean, you have so many filmmakers that will have some things about them that you go, that's their film. Like, for example, with Scott Derrickson with Black Phone, Sinister, you know, you have that kind of film grain VHS look. Every time you watch one of his films, it's like, oh, that's Scott Derrickson. For example, I think Lee Cronin will probably be the split diopter. I think I would put my whole, you know, house on it that his next film would at least include 3 split diopter shots, which, you know, would be pretty much like, is the sky blue? But overall, I did enjoy this film. I definitely think there was some parts about it that could have been improved, but hey, that happens. I definitely think that it's a good step for Blumhouse. It's not a terrible film per se. It's definitely not. Is it the best film ever made? No, I think it sits just in the middle. It's a 3-star out of 5 for me. It's just okay. It's an enjoyable film. It is a bit icky though. I mean, for someone who doesn't like gore, you're not going to like this one. I mean, there is a lot of emphasis on that kind of, you know, the gore and the kind of disgust of it all, but overall it's an okay film. I did enjoy it. I had a fun time at the theater with it. It's not this film that you should be going in expecting it to change cinema per se, but overall I did think it was an enjoyable film. I would recommend it if you're into, you know, really heavy gore films, but overall if you don't exactly like, you know, pretty disgusting levels of horror, I would probably stay away from this one, just purely because the main element of scares in this film is to do with, you know, the bodily fluids and the spit and, you know, tongues and stuff like that. Basically like your typical Evil Dead sense of scares with way less build up and suspense, in my opinion. But overall, Lee Cronin's The Mummy is a decent flick. Is it the best horror film of the year? Absolutely not. Is it the scariest thing you've ever seen? Absolutely not. Don't believe any of that BS on TikTok. It's just not. It's not. It will creep you out in terms of how disgusting it is. Overall, it's not going to scare you. I don't think so, personally. But overall, thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this review, make sure to like and subscribe. Let me know what you thought of Lee Cronin's The Mummy in the comments below if you have seen it. If you haven't seen it and you want to go watch it after this review, let me know in the comments below when you come back. Let me know what you thought of it. I really appreciate all the support on the channel recently, so thank you all so much for watching, and I'll check you in the next one. And as always, have the most amazing day. Stay safe, and peace.